All right, I have to apologize for sitting on this one for a few days, so somebody might have beaten me to it, but this was just too funny. And yeah, all right. So from Feminist Current, Vancouver Women's Library opens amid anti-feminist backlash, published February 7th, 2017 by Meghan Murphy. No, goddamn these fucking ads. Okay. During the second wave, there was a bona fide feminist bookstore movement. By the way, there's somebody who asked me, that's actually a really old electric heater that's built into the wall of this place, that bang sound. Um, but I mean, the thing is unbelievably well made. I mean, it's just incredible. It's an incredible old heater. Anyway, it's just that it's made completely of metal. It's like it's almost army issue how well it's freaking made. It reminds me of old, like my dad's old ammo box. It's so made of such heavy steel, or aluminum. I'm not sure which, but that's the thing, is it gets all misshapen and adjusts and goes bing, and yeah. During the second wave, there was a bona fide feminist bookstore movement. Women's spaces, presses, writing, and events were seen as integral to feminism. This meant that women's bookstores were valued, not only as ways to make women's writing and work accessible, but as physical spaces within which women could gather, meet other women, and become politicized. At one time, there were over 150 women's bookstores across North America. The first one, the Minneapolis Amazon Bookstore, opened on the porch of a commune in 1970. By 1997, there were 175 of them, mostly run by volunteers and collectives. Right on. I had no problem with volunteers and collectives sharing ideas. Don't get me ever wrong about this. Same thing to some degree with unions. Just don't force your shit on other people. But just 2 decades later, almost every single one has closed down. In Vancouver, Women in Print, which was in business for 12 years, closing in 2005, and the Vancouver Women's Bookstore, which closed in 1996 after being open for over 20 years, are no longer. But the need has not gone away. In fact, it seems evident. These spaces are more essential than ever before as the feminist movement faces increasingly vicious backlash from the right, the left, and the media. The Vancouver Women's Library launched on Friday night in a small space on the east side. Women of all ages and varied backgrounds who came to celebrate and socialize were surprised to be met by protesters. Those goddamn men's rights activists. Those motherfuckers. Who not only harassed them verbally, the motherfuckers, but attempted to physically bar them from entering the building. Can you believe this in Canada? Can you believe this in Canada? Of all places in Canada, people standing like zombies in your way while you're trying to read feminist stuff. Local feminist activist Jindy Mehat told me that she arrived at 1670 Franklin Street close to 9 p.m. There were people standing outside holding a banner reading, Trans Communist Cadre? What? They were protesting the feminists? Well, this is getting fascinating. And the situation was tense, she said. Mahat and a friend went inside only to find things were, quote, even worse, unquote, in the library. I heard a man saying really loudly, I wish they would take all of the... Okay, this one, I'm breaking character now. Swerf? And TERF books off the shelf. So this is SWERF, TERF, all in capital letters. So I'm figuring it's an acronym. She said, I found it really shocking that he was very performatively spewing that kind of language in a feminist space, because those are clearly really misogynistic terms. I guess I'm not a misogynist. I'm more of a men's rights MGTOW guy. I don't understand. I know what women are, so I don't fear them and have avarice toward them because of my ignorance of them. You know, snake handlers don't fear vipers. They know vipers bite. Mahad entered the room where the catalog of books was and saw two women standing in front of the books with their hands on their hips, physically taking up as much space as they could in order to prevent people from seeing the shelves. I didn't realize that's what they were doing at first, she told me. I thought they were maybe just standing there and not being very conscious of how much room they were taking up in that small space. I said, "Excuse me," very politely to one woman, and then sort of tried to slip around behind her to get closer to the books to look at them. And she said to me under her breath, "If you push me one more time, you're going to be sorry." Because that's what's up with trans commies. They'll make you feel sorry for wanting to read books. Motherfuckers. Jen Kim, a feminist activist and member of the Guerrilla Feminist Collective, had a similarly intimidating experience. Arriving at about 8:30 p.m., she walked up to the door of the building where one person holding a sign physically blocked Kim from accessing the door, pushing her aggressively. They used all of their body force, and I almost fell, Kim told me. But she kept trying to work her way around them. I managed to inch slowly past them and open the door. See, this is why you carry a machete, and you just start hacking at them. And don't worry, I mean, after 3 or 4 of them, you take a gash out of 2 or 3 of them, and flat one of them, then don't worry. They'll get the idea that they should go running off before you put a tire around their neck and light it on fire. I managed to inch slowly past them and open the door, fearing they'd push and shut the door on my hand or arm. During this time, another man stood beside Kim, yelling slurs at her. She managed to get in eventually, struggling past the individual blocking the door, because you see, that's the deal with commies who have medical problems with their brains. See, they abuse women, especially Canadian commies. They really like picking on chicks. That's what this article says. There were 29 protesters outside at one point drinking beer. Drunk tranny communists intimidating women in Canada. That's what the Trudeau government allows. Yep, forest fires and drunk night at the Roxy or something, while at your library, at your local volunteer library. Motherfuckers. Approximately 6 to 8 protesters came inside, some of whom began smoking in the non-smoking building, which hosts a number of art studios. One woman shouted, "No swerfs, no turfs." I don't know what that. And another accused the library founders of violence because they stocked books. See, books are violence to trans commies, especially the Canadian drunks, who apparently are tobacco addicts as well. An elder feminist asked the protesters to explain the accusation of violence, saying, "I've been in feminism for a hell of a long time, longer than most of you, and I'm supporting you, and I'm supporting this space. I think you need to examine the library, and I think you need to talk before you use such words without really understanding." Because people need drunk, tranny commies. They need to understand feminists. None of the protesters qualified their use of the word violence to describe the existence of a small volunteer-run women's library. Instead, launched into various accusations rooted in disingenuous and confused interpretations of feminist analysis. So for everybody who's libertarian, alt-right, floating in the Oort cloud of that, I know, isn't that sweet on the palate? Wasn't that just delicious? To say that women, this is a quote, to say that women who take a global view of prostitution and see it in a context of racism, colonialism, capitalism, and misogyny, who aren't just focused on white Western middle-class cam girls, are exclusionary makes no sense, Mahat said. It doesn't hold up to any cognitive scrutiny. And these are the same people that trumpet that they are being silenced. Well, what were they doing here? They were trying to silence and intimidate and bully Milo Yiannopoulos fans. I'm sorry, feminists. Sorry. Oh my God. What? I smoked too much weed. She added, a male protester proceeded to rip a Scum Manifesto poster off the wall. Apparently confused about the content of the book and who the author was. He defended this act by claiming the Scum Manifesto was written by a woman, quote, who was beating up trans women, unquote. Valerie Solanas did no such thing. Of course, no feminist in history has ever done such a thing. Near the end of the night, the protesters poured red wine on the bookshelves. Red wine. Go to my head. Makes me forget all the feminist literature that you destroyed. Books stole alcohol and pulled the fire alarm. They love the fire alarm thing. What is it with social justice warriors, commies, and the broken people and pulling fire alarms? I swear, this is one of the few things, and this isn't just really all my life, the only times people have falsely pulled fire alarms, these were all people who were either very diverse, were leftist protesters, or like, yeah, I've never had an instance of like a white Christian guy, like the white Republican dude, pulling a fucking fire alarm. That's just never happened in my experience. The only guy I know who like literally was the example for the local 4J school district. This kid is like literally from like the royalty of hippies. I'm just, my God, this is just great. The library's hand-painted sandwich board was stolen the following day. You showed them, commies. Absolutely, because that's what commies do. They steal your sandwich board. God damn. Broken ass motherfuckers. Absolutely, we were frightened, said Kiera Smith Tague. So it's Kiera Smith-Tague, which, from what I understand, is a fucking insult by British people call Catholic Irish tags, if I remember correctly. Maybe it's tag you. I bet it's tag you. Which shows that, sorry, a member of the Vancouver Rape Relief and Women's Shelter Collective who attended the event, especially when there were men in there intimidating us physically. Janine Mitchell, an original founder of the Vancouver Women's Bookstore, attended the launch but arrived after the police had been called and the protesters had left the building. Last thing I expected was pickets outside, Mitchell told me. When we started the Vancouver Women's Bookstore, people had different views on feminism, but everyone was glad that we were opening. It was a resource for the community. Mitchell told me that there were nearly 30 people outside when she arrived, a number of whom were men. You see this? Notice. Boom. Notice. Trans, commie, cadre, but nope. Keeps coming up about men. No, you see there's all these men who are involved. There's a few men. She was shocked at the extremity of the signs, some of which claimed the library founders hated women or were fascists. Just seemed over the top, Mitchell said. Greeting somebody else's community project with such an overkill of anger and hatred seems like an odd way to be using resources to help women, she added. While the list of demands from the protesters was shared online by a group called Gays Against Gentrification, GAG, the group denies involvement in the protest. The note itself, passed along to women at the launch in the form of a pink pamphlet, rattles off a number of misrepresentations and outright lies about feminist politics and the aims of the library. It goes on to libel one of the founders, M. Laurent, demanding she step down. Co-founder Beck Wonders told me that, counter to the claims of the protesters, the catalog is very diverse in terms of authors and perspectives. But even if what the protesters said was true. Banning books is a dangerous thing to advocate for. Oh, fucking ching. In Nazi Germany, books that represented dissenting views or ideology were targeted for boining. The Christian right continues to work to ban blasphemous works today. You see it, somewhere there's a Christian right that's desperate, that has some power to ban books from someplace. It doesn't say where. These protesters, ever fond of loosely throwing around the term fascism, seem unaware of how fine a line they walk when fighting to ban and censor work that challenges their preferred discourse and mantras. In this case, the list of books the group demanded be banned seemed cobbled together based on little more than a scan of titles. Among the 20 titles the protesters have demanded be banned from the library were Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, a book that teaches healing through Buddhism and meditation. First Buddhist Women, Poems and Stories of Awakening by Susan Murcott, and The Female Man, a science fiction novel by Joanna Russ. The list also includes books that are critical of men's exploitation, abuse, and commodification of women, including God damn it, this is so good. This is so good. Get ready for it. This is gonna be like having a cold root beer on a hot day. Including Andrea Dworkin's Pornography, Men Possessing Women, Not a Choice, Not a Job, Exposing the Myths About Prostitution and the Global Sex Trade by Janice Raymond, and Kathleen Berry's Female Sexual Slavery, inexplicably spelled S-L... asterisk, the asterisk, R-Y in the pamphlet. Wonders found the listing consistent. It's not a real conversation or critique. Laurent agrees. You can definitely tell that this list, this is quoted, you can definitely tell that this list is born out of a vacuous approach. Anything that signified an association with the second wave, even if the content had nothing to do with second wave politics, was put on the list. It's hard to take seriously, ellipsis, unquote, because you see, you simply should never take trans communists who drink a lot and smoke cigarettes seriously, especially if a lot of them are men. Despite claims that the library is trans and sex worker exclusionary, the space is neither. It is open to everyone, though memberships are for women only. What? And the website states, we welcome all women, regardless of creed, class, gender, race, or sexualities. All of slashes. The catalog itself features a diverse selection of text, from various political perspectives, many not political at all. We have texts by Leslie Feinberg. We have texts by Amber Dawn. We have good books on global sex work. Wonders tells me the catalog also includes fiction, poetry, mysteries, multilingual books, and Wonders says they want to expand their children's section. Their library is still small, though it's growing very quickly as donations pour in. Started from the founder's own personal collections and the collections of other women. We don't censor any text as long as it's written by a woman, so any donation that comes our way will put it on the shelves, Wonders tells me. Quote, we also have a wish list feature on our website, so you can suggest texts if you feel like something's missing or you want to read something. We're trying to be as varied as possible and with as many genres as possible. When it comes to the overtly political text, we do not want to carry opposing views, but it's important to us not to censor anything. While many are baffled as to why protesters would focus their energy on shutting down a library, Smith Tagu says the protest was rooted in anti-woman attitudes aimed at silencing feminist voices in history. Quote, women's resistance and the women's liberation movement has, as long as it's existed, been willfully written out of history. It's clear that in this day and age there are still misogynist attitudes toward promoting women's liberation, and the books that contain some of that history. This attempt to shut down this project was just another example of that, unquote. It's difficult to know who was behind the protest or what the group represents. You see, it's not that they have a name. There's apparently possibly a link to their website. I mean, who? What? One protester told Smith Tegu that, or they were not an organized group or collective. Oh, they were like anarchists. Don't you love syndicalists and trans commies who drink a lot? And another note published by GAG states the protesters are a decentralized group of individuals. Though chatter online about the library spread far and wide in terms of official organizing, I found only one Instagram post on the account of a man named Jason reeeee, who witnesses identify as the same person who ripped down the Scum Manifesto poster and who was among those verbally harassing women in front of the building. Oh yeah, and it shows the pictures, the screen caps. Regardless of what the protesters hoped to convey, the hostility toward women's history and contribution to the canon of political thought was palpable. One protester even held a sign announcing the second wave is over, while theorists like Marx have yet to be deemed irrelevant to today's leftists. Women whose writing is only 40 or 50 years old are already being erased, characterized as out of date and insignificant. Oh, honey. And, quote, it's so much harder for women to hold social currency, Laurent told me. I read Aristotle and Plato, but I'm told Andrea Dworkin is no longer relevant. I don't buy that. And you don't have a lot of money. Indeed, the existence of a woman's library seeks to counter the notion that men's work, history, and ideas are intrinsically of more value than women's. Duh. Wonders points out that beyond the sexism inherent to efforts to erase and dismiss an entire generation of women's writing, quote, to generalize about a whole array of literature that was produced by women is ahistorical, unquote. Again, it's really important to have an archive that reveals the fullness of women's history. Laurent says, a lot of contemporary feminist book sections are missing key historical texts with the library. We're able to reveal and demonstrate the fullness of women's literature. In general, the protesters seem to lack any interest in productive engagement with either the library or the women. Rather, they repeated various claims rooted in nothing of substance, made numerous assumptions that turned out to be untrue, and advocated the arbitrary censorship of women's work. Based on the shock and confusion expressed by feminist elders who attended the launch, it's fair to say this particular backlash is one we have never seen before. Isolated and emboldened in online communities, young leftists have become comfortable attacking without asking, silencing without thinking, knee-jerking their way towards a doctrine that vilifies anyone who doesn't join their church. Doesn't that? Oh. Let me wash this down. Give me a second. We are living in a seriously politically divisive and dangerous time globally, Smith Tegu told me. There are people who have an incredible amount of power to oppress people in North America right now. Last month, women came together at the Global Women's March. And even though we didn't all agree on every issue, we could at least understand that the stakes are very high right now and that alliances are necessary. To me, that is exactly the attitude that people who want to organize for social change need to be taking on. Smith Tegu questioned the decision to put one's efforts toward, quote, destroying a small grassroots women's library, unquote, adding, quote, they clearly don't have an analysis of the reality we live in and of what's important right now, unquote. God damn it, this is so good. While this protest and these demands for censorship will have no impact on the survival of the library, indeed, in light of the protest, the founders tell me they have been inundated with support and donations countering the attack. It is distressing to see these tactics used against a systemically marginalized group. Patriarchal society has long determined women's culture and words to be dangerous, or just simply a part of normal culture and just words. A lot of people have words that they say Systemically squashing and undermining any attempts to escape our subordinate status. You see, like Hildegard of Bingen. Dividing us to prevent solidarity among sisters. Yeah, Catholics hate the Virgin Mary. No matter what you put on your banner, no matter what you chant in defense, joining those efforts puts you firmly on the side of the oppressor. The oppressor, man. Why you have to oppress me, man?